welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to do my book haul. I know they're book haul, but this is about the time of the year they happen because this is my book haul from the annual summer book sale at the Kinokuniya bookstore in Tokyo, which is when they do their massive sale of English language books that lasts about 2 weeks, and the books are up to 60% off. So obviously, I mean, the prices become cheaper than what you can get in the US if I were actually to go home in the US. So yeah, this is where I stock up. This is when I buy a lot of books. You'll see. It's also a time where I like to experiment more because the books are so inexpensive, and it's a time where I kind of just let myself go. So I'll show you. Let's start off with the first book that I got. I decided to pick up Redux by John Updike. I have never read John Updike, but obviously this is a very famous American author, and I like to be very well versed in, you know, the great American authors. I had a really great time reading Oil last year by Upton Sinclair, and I've spent a lot of time reading Steinbeck and Ralph Ellison and just all these amazing American authors. They never gets tired, and so I'm always trying to plug in the holes when it comes to authors I have not read yet. And yeah, John Updike I just haven't read yet. I really never really knew who he was, to be honest. Like, obviously I know his famous titles. You always see them when you're reading you know, best of list or best novels from American authors, but I never really knew when he published or what he wrote. I just know his titles. But this one sounded really interesting. It's basically in 1969 there was a man who his wife leaves him. She takes their son with them, so he's left alone, and he ends up in a relationship with an 18-year-old girl, and then eventually that 18-year-old girl brings her black friend to the house, and it's just, I don't know, it's gonna be a book 1969. Think all the racial tensions that's going on in America at the time. I think it'll make for a really interesting book. I'm excited to try some John Updike. I feel like I could really like him, just like Upton Sinclair. Another book that I got by an author that I know the name very, very well, obviously, but I haven't actually read myself. I decided to pick up the book The Apple in the Dark by Clarice Lespector. Clarice Lespector is a really well-known British female author who has written amazing books, apparently, and I am remiss of not having read any of her works yet. So I decided to pick this one just because it said Lespector considered this book to be her best one, as it's the intoxicating portrayal of a man searching for his destiny, and apparently it's her mystical, enigmatic masterpiece. So I thought, why not finally put my hands on a Clarice Lespector book. You can kind of see on this one why the books are 60% off. You can see like the cover is a little bit, there's a weird sort of like deformity on it, and there's a little bit of a tear there. But I mean, like, this is up to like Japanese standards of, so for this one, the only problem with this one is here at the bottom corner. You can see that the cover had been bent at this corner. So thanks to Japanese standards of having perfect books on sale, perfect books to sell when it's full price. Obviously, when it gets even slightly damaged, they say, you know what, this is not up to our standards. The customers won't like this, and they put these off at 60%. So yeah, this is why I take a lot more risk buying authors I haven't read before at these prices, because how can you not? So I got a Clarice Lespector. Then I picked up The Master of Ballantrae by Robert Louis Stevenson. I've had a lot of fun rereading Robert Louis Stevenson. Recently I read 2 of his books last year, and I just love his really gothic feels. His writing is fun, his plots are just fantastic. You really just have a really good time when you read him. And this one is just, it's just, it sounds like right up right up my alley. Like, let me tell you what it's about. So, set at the time of the Jacobite uprising, the master of Ballantrae tells of a family divided. James Dury, master of Ballantrae, abandons his ancestral home to support the Scottish rebellion, leaving his younger brother Henry, who is faithful to the English crown, to inherit the title of Lord Durrisdeer. But James returns years later, embittered by battles and a savage life of piracy on the high seas, to demand his inheritance. So, two brothers battling it out. I think it's going to be a really fantastic and really fun read. So, love that. Then, those are like the 3 classics that I bought, or what would be considered classics for the most part. And then this next book is a book I definitely, it's out of my comfort zone, but every once in a while I try and read a book that is more popular in current contemporary times, that is in Japanese. And I decided to go with this book called Blonde Roots by Bernardine Evaristo. So I've seen so many videos that about this author and how they really separate her from all the other contemporary authors by saying that she really just has this incredible talent. And while some of her other books haven't really intrigued me as much, this one I thought sounded really interesting, just by the tagline that says, "Imagine if the transatlantic slave trade was reversed. Imagine Africans the masters and Europeans their slaves." And that really intrigued me. So I really like this role reversal, and I think that could be really, really fantastic. So this is out of my comfort zone because it is very, very contemporary, and a very popular author, but I think this one could be very, very good. I've heard amazing things about Bernardine Evaristo, like really incredible things about her. So we're gonna read this one. We're gonna enjoy it. Then I did get some Japanese books in translation. Yes, these days I try not to buy too many Japanese books in translations, because I haven't really been reading much Japanese, many Japanese works, to be honest, recently. Or I always say that, but then when I do like my end of the year wrap up, it's always like Japan, 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 Japan. But considering what I used to read, I do think I have sort of veered a little bit away from that. But I always do get tempted by buying some titles. So I decided to get Voices of the Fallen Heroes and Other Stories by Yukio Mishima. I haven't really read as much Mishima as you would probably think I have, and I certainly haven't read any of his short stories. So I thought this would be a really fantastic book to pick up. This was actually very recently released, so I am surprised that it's already in the sales bin, especially since it doesn't seem like there's any sort of particularly obvious damage to it, other than, you know, a little wear and tear down here. But I mean, I'll take it. But yeah, this was published in 2025, so it's very recent. I remember, I'm pretty sure I actually mentioned this in one of my most anticipated, or not, I don't do most anticipated, I just give you, I do videos where I state which Japanese books in translation are coming out during the year before they come out. But I definitely did mention that in one of those videos. So I remember this and I picked it up. Then I picked up 3 titles from Pushkin Press, just because they do have those fun, very flirty, very colorful, very bright, bold sort of covers that are always intriguing. I got Someone to Watch Over You by Kimura. And these, because they're so short and they're so inexpensive, don't really look too much at the blurb, because these are just one-day reads. Just go to the beach, read this in one day, and be very happy. So I just sort of picked this one up. But this is a book that takes place during Corona time, so it's very up to date with our times. Then I got Mysterious Setting by Kazushige Abe. So Kazushige Abe is a very dark author. I've read one of his books before. Let me think which one it was, if I can come up with it. Yes, here we go. Of course, it's the book that I read last year, which was Nipponia Nippon. I read this last year, and it was different, and it was interesting. And I can't say with that book that I particularly loved it, but I can't say that I hated it. It was just like, it was intriguing, it was interesting. It went in a direction that I didn't think it was going to go in, which made it much more appealing. But I think it's definitely an author that I felt I needed to read another book by. So I did decide to go with Mysterious Setting to see, you know, what would come up with it. It seems he likes quite young protagonists, and his protagonist in this one is also an 18-year-old. So it'll be interesting to have this 18-year-old who has just moved to Tokyo and see what goes on with her. All right, this next book that I picked up is Spark by Naoki Matayoshi. This is a book I have hesitated on for a very long time, because it is a book that it's a book about a manzai comedy duo. Manzai is a type of comedy in Japan where basically you have two people, one of them is sort of like they're kind of like antagonists, so like they kind of like, I mean, obviously they complement each other, but they also antagonize each other in a way that creates comedy. So it's kind of like they almost create skits and dramas, and they create comedy based off of that. Versus American comedy, which tends to be like stand-up, where there's one person who stands up and for an hour discusses social issues, but in a comedic manner, or things that are going on in America in a comedic manner. So manzai duos, there's a very specific type of comedy in Japan. And so the reason I hesitated about buying this book, in English translation at the very least, was because it is humor, and humor typically tends to be very difficult to translate. So I was afraid there was going to be a lot lost in translation if I read this in English, and I thought it would be better to read this in Japanese. But there we go, I decided to pick this up into English. After all, again, this is one of those, could read this on the beach during the summer. Anyway, so those are all the Japanese books that I got. Then, when I was in the US on my trip, and I had also done a TBR refresh, meaning that I bought a bunch of books in English because I really wanted to refresh my TBR. This book was on my list of books to buy in the US, but I could not find it new and I could not find it used. That is Stowaway Tomorrows by John Wyndham. Basically, I just wanted to buy some John Wyndham books that I had not read yet, because I really, really love this author. He is an amazing science fiction author who is just killer. His last book that I read, The Kraken Wakes, which I read in February, terrifying, so good, mesmerizing, terrifying, horrible. Just, oh, I have a coworker who's reading that now based off of my recommendation, and she's just like, oh my goodness, I'm finishing this over the weekend, and I'll tell you all about it on Tuesday. So yeah, I really wanted to read some John Wyndham when I was back in the US, but I could not find any of his works other than the works I've already read by him. So this one was in the bargain bin, and I immediately picked it up because I was like, oh my goodness. Like, I was so obsessed that I went through all the boxes. Like, maybe there's another one, maybe there's another one. There was not, not at bargain prices, but amazing. There's still so many that I need to get. I really want to read Chucky. That one is on my list of books that I need to grab. I need to buy The Seeds of Time, The Outward Urge, Consider Her Ways and Others, Web. Like, there's so many of his books that I need to find and buy, but his books are just not, it's always the same books in the bookstores, which, I mean, obviously, because they're his most famous titles and they're amazing, they're fantastic, obviously, you know, they're bestsellers, so obviously they're going to sell very well, but I really want his other works. I want all of his works. But yeah, so I grabbed this one, and then this wasn't on sale, so I did buy full price, which full price in Japan means full price American plus import fee, so it's very expensive. This is the only thing that was expensive on my whole haul. But I also picked up his stories, Technical Slip and Other Stories, so I bought this as well. And that cover is really cool. I really liked it. I just know there's going to be something really eerie and scary. So I got this because I'm just seriously obsessed with this author. I really love John Wyndham. I think everyone should read him. And there's just a good list of stories here that are going to be really fantastic. I really can't wait. So this one I bought full price. This was expensive, but it is what it is. Then I bought a lot of vintage classics, these red vintage classics. I bought this one book. You're gonna understand very quickly why I'm smiling. I bought this one book called Death and the Penguin by Andrey Kurkov. The tagline is what sold this on me. I don't know who this author is, but I mean the tagline, but also the title. The title really intrigued me when I said The Death and the Penguin. Like, what does the penguin have to do with anything? But I thought that sounds intriguing. I really want to read the blurb. And then the blurb, the very first line, the tagline says, "All that stands between one man and murder by the mafia is a penguin." So I thought this sounded really fantastic. It's considered a black comedy, and this one just really, really intrigued me. So, okay. Now, this is where the haul gets really crazy. It's also the end of the haul, but this is where the haul gets really crazy. So, these Vintage Classics editions, which are really fantastic, just look at these this very, again, colorful, bold, bright cover. So, there was another one, but this is by Roberto Bolaño. So Roberto Bolaño is very famous Spanish writing author, famous for his very, very big book, 2666, and his book, and then after that, The Savage Detectives. He's very famous for those two. But I saw this, and again, this Vintage Classics cover with these bright colors really intrigued me. And in the bins, I kept looking, and there were more of these, and more of these, and more of them, and more of them. It's like all Roberto Bolaño, like the entire collection of Roberto Bolaño was in these books. So I got a lot of them. I picked up almost all the ones they had. I left like 2 or 3 that were a little bit thicker because I wanted to stick with novellas, because I really needed short works on my bookshelves, because I have a lot of I have so many books that are over 500 pages now that I just really needed some really short books that I know are strong. But here's the thing, even though I know 2666 and The Savage Detectives, I have actually never read them. I have not read any of Roberto Bolaño's works. My mom has read them though, and she really likes them and wants me to read those books. They're in my room back in the US, but I've never picked them up. And so I figured, so when I was debating, do I only buy one book or do I buy all of them? Normal me, the usual me, would only buy one, because I always say, to be able to control your TBR, never buy multiple books by an author, especially if you never read them. But also just don't buy multiple works by a single author. If you have access to being able to buy books whenever you want, in the language that you want, there's no need. You can just, when you finish reading a title by an author, you can just go out and buy another one. There's no need to just collect all of them, because what if you don't like it? Now you're stuck with 10 books. So this is me breaking that rule, because I do have the backup of, if I don't like any of these, I can just give them to my mom and she'll probably enjoy them. So that was the thought process in my head. But the thing is that all the blurbs, along with the amazing covers, which I'll show them, but the blurbs to all of these sounded absolutely fascinating. There was not one where I thought, I don't really want to read that. That one doesn't sound as good as the others. No, they all sounded fantastic. Here you can see 2 have a little bit of sun damage, which again is why they're in the bargain bin. But other than that, they're all perfect condition. The other ones are all perfect condition. I really don't understand, other than there are a lot of these, so maybe they just ordered too many and no one's buying them, which is, no one's buying them until I show up. But yeah, so I grabbed all of these. So let me go through them one by one. I bought the Insufferable Gaucho. So these are so some of these are novellas and some of them are short story collections. But the Insufferable Gaucho. I got Cowboy Graves. Then Antwerp, which is a tiny little novella. So a good beach read. I got a little Lumpen Novelita. Ugh, these covers are so good. It's just like so the blurb on this one is, now I am a mother and married woman, but not long ago I led a life of crime. So begins Bianca's tale growing up the hard way. Orphaned overnight as a teenager, she drops out of school and drifts into the bad company of two criminals her brother brings home. As the four of them plot a fantastical crime, Bianca learns she can drift even lower. So yeah, like, ugh, they all sounded amazing. This is Woes of the True Policeman. When Oscar Amalfitano begins an affair with one of his students, he has no idea where it will lead. This is The Spirit of Science Fiction. The two young poets, Jan and Remo, find themselves adrift in Mexico City. This is Monsieur, I believe it's Pain. I want to say Monsieur Pain, but since he writes very dark, sort of crime-esque books, I figure it's not Mr. Bread, it's Mr. Pain. But yeah, Monsieur Pain, I'm guessing is what the title is. But like here, a wonderful, I actually don't know what this word is. A wonderfully oneric, O-N-E-I-R-I-C, oneric. A wonderfully oneric. How do I say that with an American accent? Oneric, O-N-E-I-R-I-C. So a wonderfully O-N-E-I-R-I-C novella that blends the finest of Edgar Allan Poe, which I just read and really loved, with Jorge Luis Borges, which we all know is amazing, and Bolaño's truly astonishing alchemical gifts. Monsieur Pain is a gripping noir conspiracy as rich as it is strange. What is that word though? O-N-E-I-R-I-C. No idea. I bought this book called Amulet. Then I also got Distant Star. This is the book that actually started, it's the one I saw first, and that made me think, ooh, maybe I should just grab all of these. And then The Skating Ring. This was the last one I grabbed out of the box before leaving like a few others behind. So there you go. I got this entire group collection of Roberto Bolaño vintage classic books because I have to admit I was this doesn't happen to me, but I was enchanted. I was bewitched, and I just needed to buy all of them. So there you go. That is my book haul for the annual summer book haul. That means I'm not doing the French book haul. Typically I do both the English one and the French one. But my French book haul, my French TBR is already very long. So I basically I try and keep my language TBRs at a certain limit. So my Japanese TBR is usually around the 30 books range because obviously I live in Japan and I have easy access to Japanese bookstores. So there's no reason for me to overly create a physical TBR pile. That would just overwhelm me and I would never read them. I just know it would never happen. Especially since I don't read works in Japanese as quickly as I read in my other languages. So I try and keep that at 30. And then my current French TBR is around 95. It's just under 100, with the caveat that there are a few books that are several volumes, or I have a collection of certain authors. So my Zola Rougon-Macquart cycle, I still have about 9 books, 9 books left in that series. So but those books are definitely getting read because I've been reading a Zola every 2 months. So those books are definitely getting read. So those kind of almost don't count to the TBR because they're technically already read. My Jules Verne collection, that is an author that whenever I go back to France, I'll buy 10 of them at a time just to add to my collection as I find them. And again, I know those are getting read. Those are a sure thing when it comes to being read. So that's another 10 books that aren't really part of the TBR because I know they're getting read. My Dumas collection is the same thing. There's just certain authors, they're guaranteed reads. There's no question about it. There's no doubt. So, but even with that, like, so my true TBR of like unique authors lays probably actually more around the 60 book range or so. And I like keeping it there. So basically, but overall, I like to keep my French TBR under 100, and I am very close to 100, so I don't need to be there. Now, when I started buying all these books in English, so from the most recent book haul where I went back to the States and refreshed my English TBR, and then from this book haul, my English TBR had dropped down to about like 50 books or so. And I don't live in the US, and I don't go home frequently enough to the US to be able to refresh my TBR that much. So I definitely needed to like go hard with these two book hauls. I knew I was going to buy a lot of books, and so I didn't really, there was no like, if I had an inkling of wanting to buy something, I just bought it. There was just like no decision making really needed to be made, no hesitation to be had. So I think that puts my English language TBR now about the same now, probably like just short of 100. And so now I'm good. Now I'm satisfied. Now I can just read the books that I bought and let the TBR dwindle again until the Christmas period, which typically Christmas I do end up buying a few more books, but that depends on which country I'm going to. For example, last year Christmas I was traveling around Singapore and Southeast Asia, so not really buying books during Christmas that year. So it really just depends. But I needed a really big English language TBR refresh, and I've done that. I've completed it. I'm very happy, and now I can consider it a success. So yeah, my physical TBR with all the languages combined hits around like 220, 230 books right now. But I'm pretty happy with that. I read, right these days, I've been reading about 40 books a year. So that's about like 5 years worth of reading. And there's actually a lot of books in that I've tried before, at least, and sort of abandoned. But I keep them on my TBR because sometimes I think, it wasn't a bad book. So there is a chance of me going back and actually trying again, versus books where I just like get rid of them because I know I'm not gonna read them. So yeah, that's where we are. Those are the books that I bought in my recent book haul. Oh, like I said, I was saying there is the French language sale, but I'm not going to that one because I don't really need to refresh my French TBR right now. And typically there isn't as much that I want to buy there, especially since when it comes to like the French books, I do tend to like the French classics better, and then I like certain editions more than others. And then I might be going back to France in August. I really need to buy those tickets if I'm going to be doing that, because that's like in a week or so, 2 weeks, whatever, I have no idea. But if I do go to France, although I won't be in Paris, but maybe if I hit a flea market, I might bring home like 2, 3, or 4 books. But yeah, just no need to refresh my French TBR. It's fine where it is. So yeah, there we go. Hope you enjoyed that video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!